Okay, right, so let's get down to business. So guys, as you saw from the title of the video, what I want to talk about is with cameras like the Voigtlander Bessa series, these rangefinder film cameras, is it still worth buying a Leica film camera? Now I know a lot of first timers, people who want to get into the rangefinder film system, they ask themselves that because the price point of any of the Bessa range, the Bessa R, R2, M, A, R3, AM, R4, there's 6 different cameras that you can get, or maybe 7. But when you compare them to the Leica, any Leica brand, you're probably most likely looking at an M3, 4, or 6 if you're just getting into the Leica system. And you look at the features and you look at the price and you go, is it worth getting the Voigtlander? I'm going to probably save myself at least $1,000 and get a camera that is probably more capable than a lot of those other Leica cameras, having aperture priority mode in some cases, having a 0.002 of a second max shutter speed, having, the quick load film system like most SLR cameras, where you just pop the back open as opposed to the bit more fiddly way of loading film in a Leica. The camera does have some good things going for it, and it's a question that I asked myself before I bought my Leica M7. Now, those who have watched the channel for a while, you guys know that I owned a Leica M7 and an M6 in the past. But if you ever watched that first video I ever posted, the very first film rangefinder that I ever put my hands on was a friend's Voigtlander Bessa R3, I think, at the time. I did use his first, and I was, looking through the Viewfinder and the rangefinder focusing system, and I was like, man, that's great. I want that. That's, such a great camera. But I did ask myself that question. I said, well, I know that my friend's Bessa cost him absolutely nothing, and then he put a really expensive Zeiss lens on it as well. And the pictures he was taking were amazing because it was an amazing lens. But I did think about that question first. I was like, do I get myself a Voigtlander Bessa or do I get the Leica? And I opted for the Leica because I just wanted... It had nothing to do with the features of the camera. I just wanted that red dot on my camera. I wanted that illustrious red logo. I wanted that Leica dot on my camera because I was a bit more naive when I first bought that Leica, thinking that, man, I got a Leica and I'm going to take the most amazing photos ever. I've got this super discreet camera that all the pros use, and very naive in thinking that way, to be perfectly honest. It was a lovely camera and a lovely piece of equipment. But it was a very naive way to look at things, which is, a couple years down the track now, and hey, I don't own a Leica anymore. I have the Voigtlander Bessa R2A. So let's just get down to a few things that I've noted while shooting this camera for the last couple of weeks. Things that you're going to be comparing them to if you want to buy a Leica. And things that may be deal breakers for some people. They might be, might solidify the purchase for some other people. So I'm going to get my notes and we're going to talk about a few of these key points. So guys, to the notes. Now, the first thing I want to talk about is the actual camera body itself and features. So one thing I'm going to say right off the bat is that I don't like the film advance on this compared to a Leica. Let me just, there's a frame for you, but you can hear that, guys. The film advance is nowhere near as smooth as a Leica. It's definitely just as smooth as any high-end SLR. It's definitely a lot smoother than my trusty 1978 Nikon EL, which is my first film camera. Definitely smoother than that. But it's nowhere near the build quality, machining quality and finish of a Leica. One thing I've got to give the Leica, it is just a better built camera in every aspect, to be perfectly honest. So that brings me on to the next point. Now, the next thing I hear a lot of people complain about these cameras is the shutter dial. Now, if you've ever used any shutter dial on a Leica camera, it's, very, very smooth. They move nice and easily. There's, a good amount of resistance, but it just feels like as soon as you turn it, it feels like it's really high quality. The Voigtlander, on other hands, doesn't. Now, I've heard people complain, I should say, that you need 2 fingers to move it. I don't find that. I mean, I can, just as easily compose and change my shutter speeds with my index finger, but it's pretty stiff. The clicks don't sound as nice as a Leica. It doesn't feel as well made as a Leica camera shutter dial. Next thing I want to talk about, guys, were an area that these cameras are compared to the Leicas, and a lot of people say they are inferior to the Leica, and that is the Viewfinder and Rangefinder patch. Now, I will say inferior in one aspect, yes. Now, the rangefinder base length. Now, for those of you who don't know what the base length, what that means when we're talking about a camera, I'm talking about, see this little window right here. So this is how rangefinder focuses, okay? So through your viewfinder, and then this is the rangefinder focusing patch, this little square here. So that distance between those two is your rangefinder base length. Now, it is quite short on these cameras. It is quite short, I will say that. On most Leicas, so you can see here how the Voigtlander body becomes indented after we get to the shutter speeds, and it sticks down like that, whereas on the Leica camera, it's not as deep, not as recessed, I should say. And generally, on a Leica, you're going to find, with the Bessa here, how the rangefinder patch, the focusing patch is there. It's likely about here on my M6 or M7. It was considerably further away. Now, that generally means that a longer rangefinder base length is going to give you a much more accurate focus with wide apertures, so your f1.2, 1.4, f2 lenses. But I'm happy to report that shooting this lens wide open, I haven't had any issues with anything being out of focus, to be perfectly honest. I can see how if you were shooting something like the Leica Noctilux, a 0.95 lens, then yeah, you're probably going to run into some issues there, because that razor thin depth of field is, it's pretty minuscule what's going to be in focus on that. So I understand the Leicas definitely have a win in that column. But the other thing with the viewfinder is the actual rangefinder and rangefinder patch. Now, one thing that did put me off this camera initially is a lot of people saying that it's just completely inferior to a Leica. It's not as bright, it's not as contrasty, the rangefinder patch inside the viewfinder isn't as big, it's not as easy to focus. I can tell you guys right now, honestly, having owned an M6 and an M7, I can't tell the difference, guys. I really can't. I think those people are splitting hairs. I mean, I have pointed this viewfinder into the most, brightly backlit, sun, high contrast, sort of areas, and I could still get focus. I could still easily get focus. And I think you'd run into the same problem on any Leica if you were doing that as well, directly into high contrast. You're going to find it a little bit difficult. Me personally, haven't had any issues, guys. I can't tell the difference, really. Can't tell the difference, guys. The viewfinder and rangefinder, I find it just as comfortable to use and focus with as I did my M6 or M7. Now let's talk about some pros of this camera compared to the Leica cameras. So first off, guys, I'm going to say that the camera is much lighter. It doesn't feel as high quality as the Leica because the body on the M6, for instance, is all zinc, and the older cameras, it's all brass. So you're not going to have that heft to it. But the camera is thinner. If you can sandwich this, compared it side by side to a Leica, it's going to be thinner. And it's actually much lighter, and it's easier to carry around all day. I actually do find that the rubberized grip they have here on the back is perfect for your thumb. It holds your thumb really, really nicely without the need to get a thumbs up support like you can with a lot of the Leicas. It's very comfortable in the hand, and I think ergonomically, it's definitely a more ergonomic camera in the hand as far as I'm concerned than my Leica M6 or M7 was. Also, guys, the R2A here could probably be most likely compared to an M4 or an M6 in terms of frame lines. The Leica cameras do go wider to 28, whereas this camera, its widest frame lines are 35. But it's very comparable to those in the sense that, you've got roughly the same features, except this has aperture priority, which is great. And the only way you're going to get that in a Leica is if you're spending a lot of money, these days, a lot of money on an M7. And it was handy. When I had it on my M7, I did love it. But like I said, I sold my M7 because I thought it was, for what it was a lot of money. But we also have on the back here, a lock button, which is very, very helpful. I find myself using that all the time. Very, very fantastic. Max shutter speed, like I said, goes up an extra stop on these cameras to 0.002 of a second. Very, very handy. You can never have a fast enough shutter speed when it comes to film cameras, especially you want to shoot wide open in bright sunny days, so that's definitely another plus. One last pro I want to say about this camera, guys, obviously, and that's the price. I paid 750 Australian dollars for this camera, and the cheapest, when I sold my M6 about 6 months back, I sold it for $2,000. Okay, so this is far, far cheaper, more than $1,000 cheaper. And the cheapest one I've seen recently is a guy I know, Liam. He sold his on one of the local Australian film pages for $18.50. Now, $18.50 is the cheapest M6 I have ever seen go for. All right, these days, $1,850, cheapest I've ever seen. This still comes in for me. I got this $1,000 more, just over $1,000 cheaper than that. So you got to say to yourself, like, price-wise, can you beat this camera for the features that it packs? The rangefinder focusing system that you don't find outside, high-end outside of a Leica. Can you really beat this camera on price? It's very, very hard to beat this camera on price. I think the value is outstanding. But the big thing, guys, is, and I'm just going to say it right now, and I don't think there's anyone out there who will disagree with me, this camera is nowhere near as well built or well operating as a Leica camera. It's just not. The time, care, and effort that goes into machining and creating a Leica rangefinder far surpasses any other camera, and always will, as far as I'm concerned. The care and quality, I have owned an M10. I did sell it, but I did own an M10 for a short while, guys. The precision on that was amazing. The precision on my M7 was fantastic. Even my M6, which was a late 80s model, still amazing precision and craftsmanship. No cameras come close to the quality of the Leicas as far as build, as far as I'm concerned. And this camera just does not live up to that. I mean, you can feel it. It is plasticky. I mean, it is well made, and it is a good camera, but it just doesn't. Everything about it, it's a good tool. I will say it's a fantastic tool, but everything about it just doesn't feel as nice as the Leica equivalent. So I know I have jumped back and forward on the fence with, during this video, guys, about, yeah, it's better, no, it's not. But, the real question you guys want to know is, should I buy it over a Leica? Two-part answer to that. Now, if you really, really want a Leica, really bad, you want an M6, you want that illustrious M6, or maybe an M4 or an M3, if you really, really want one of those, then don't buy a Voigtlander. And you're going to say, well, I can't afford a Leica. I know. 9 times out of 10, a lot of people in this situation, they'll buy a Voigtlander Bessa or some rangefinder like that, and then they'll sell it a few months down the line because I've always wanted that Leica. I just really want a Leica. I'm going to get it. So my honest opinion is, if you really, really want a Leica, don't buy a Voigtlander Bessa, because you just won't be as happy in the long run. And if you really want, the most finely crafted camera that you can get your hands on, then don't buy a Voigtlander Bessa, buy yourself a Leica instead. But if you don't buy into all the hype, or if you're on a budget and you just don't care, or you just want a quality camera at a low price, Voigtlander Bessa is a great option, guys. It's got a lot of extra features that the Leicas don't have. It is a very well built camera. It's just not on the same standard as a Leica. But essentially, it does everything that a Leica does. It takes film, it takes M-mount lenses, it takes photos, and it has aperture priority in some cases and a higher shutter speed. So it really is like, you got to weigh up the cost to yourself, guys. I mean, like I said, if you've always wanted that Leica, I think, you'll get a Voigtlander. You might be happy with it for a while, but you will sell it and get the Leica instead. I've seen people do it. The only reason that I got this camera is because I'd sold both Leicas. I didn't have a rangefinder anymore, and I just wanted a rangefinder. I honestly took a look at the Leicas, and these days I only shoot black and white on 35mm, and that's all I wanted, a 35mm rangefinder for shooting my black and white work. All color stuff I shoot these days, I've been shooting with my Hasselblad, guys. I just medium format color film, just absolutely craps all over 35mm color film, but I'm sure you guys know that. I just love that grittiness of black and white on 35mm, and I just wanted a rangefinder because I much prefer the rangefinder focusing system, and I didn't want to drop heaps of money on a Leica. And the Voigtlander Bessa just seemed like a really smart option for me. I just wanted a rangefinder as a tool. So guys, I hope this video has helped you, get some clarity between the two systems, which one might be right for you. Now, because I have owned 2 M film cameras and now the Bessa, if you have any comments, guys, or whatsoever about anything about the two systems, leave a comment and I will answer them for you guys. I'm sure there's a lot of people out there who have a lot better
knowledge than me, but if you have any of those questions, throw one down in the comments, guys, and I'll try and answer it the best I can if you need help in a decision between these two cameras. Well, guys, thanks again for tuning in to another episode of Shoots with Coops. Happy shooting, and I'll see you in the next one.